Pilot refuses to fly with singledad Copilot, turns pale when he reveals he owns the aircraft. The jet door was still open when Captain Valerie Sloan stood up so abruptly that her headset slipped off her ear and clattered onto the center console. "I will not fly with him." Her voice cut through the cockpit, sharp enough that the line technician standing just outside the door froze mid-step. Valerie raised her arm and pointed directly across the narrow flight deck. "At no point did I agree to share my cockpit with someone this unqualified," she said. "Get him off this aircraft. Now." The man she was pointing at didn't move. He sat in the right seat, hands resting calmly on his thighs, uniform neat, posture relaxed but alert. His name badge read Daniel Mercer. Beneath it, the wings of a first officer caught the early morning light coming through the windscreen. Daniel didn't look angry. He didn't look embarrassed. He didn't look surprised. He looked patient. The dispatcher standing behind the captain cleared his throat. "Captain Sloan, we're scheduled for pushback in 20 minutes. There is a problem," Valerie snapped. "This man logged a maintenance discrepancy without consulting me, delayed my flight, and then had the audacity to tell me he was following procedure. I will not be undermined in my own cockpit." Daniel finally spoke. His voice was low even. "I didn't undermine you, Captain. I followed company policy." Valerie let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's rich. You think policy gives you authority over my judgment?" She turned toward the open cockpit door and raised her voice deliberately, making sure it carried. "Flight Ops needs to send me a replacement first officer immediately. If they don't, I'm walking." The dispatcher hesitated. "Captain, I need to understand." "You don't need to understand," she cut in. "You need to comply. I've been flying jets longer than he's been raising kids alone, and I'm not risking my license because someone wants to play hero." That landed. The line technician shifted uncomfortably. The dispatcher avoided Daniel's eyes. Daniel didn't react. He reached down, calmly picked up his phone from the side pocket of his flight bag and unlocked the screen. He didn't dial. He just looked at it for a moment, then set it face down on the console between them. Valerie noticed. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then back to him. "Who exactly do you think you're calling?" Daniel met her gaze, still calm. "That depends," he said. "On who actually has the authority to decide who flies this aircraft." The cockpit fell silent. Outside, the Gulfstream sat gleaming on the tarmac, engines quiet, passengers waiting in the lounge, unaware that the flight might not leave at all. And in that moment, with a captain demanding his removal, a crew watching in uncomfortable silence, and a jet worth tens of millions of dollars sitting idle, one question hung in the air: who really held the power in this cockpit? If you appreciate slow burn stories where truth wins quietly, subscribe to the channel. These are the kinds of stories we tell here. Daniel Mercer had learned long ago that the cockpit rewarded patience. The jet didn't care about confidence. It didn't respond to ego. It responded to preparation, discipline, and respect for process. That was why, standing just outside the crew briefing room at Teterboro that morning, Daniel hadn't rushed. He checked his watch once, 6:12 a.m., then adjusted the strap of his flight bag on his shoulder and waited as the overnight fog lifted slowly off the runway. The Gulfstream G650 sat parked near the far end of the ramp, its white fuselage catching the early light. Clean. Quiet. Expensive in the way only machines built for precision were expensive. The kind of aircraft where small oversights didn't stay small for long. Daniel had flown this model dozens of times. He liked it because it was honest. If something was wrong, it told you, provided you were willing to listen. Inside the briefing room, the atmosphere was colder. Captain Valerie Sloan was already seated at the head of the table, tablet propped up, scrolling through weather data. She didn't look up when Daniel entered. She didn't acknowledge him. She didn't even pause. Daniel set his bag down quietly and took the seat across from her. He recognized her immediately. Everyone did. Valerie Sloan was well known within the company, and not just because she wore 4 stripes. She had over 15,000 flight hours. Multiple type ratings. A spotless accident record. She had flown celebrities, heads of state, executives who thought turbulence was a personal insult. On paper, she was everything the company advertised. But reputation wasn't built on paper alone. Daniel had heard the stories just like everyone else. The raised voice. The intolerance for questions. The tendency to interpret procedure as challenge. Still, he kept his posture neutral and his attention forward. Professionalism wasn't selective. You applied it whether or not it was returned. Valerie finally looked up. Her gaze moved over him once. Uniform, insignia, age, then stopped. "You're Mercer," she said, not a question. "Yes, Captain." She nodded faintly and went back to her tablet. We're flying a principal to Aspen. Wheels up at 8. Weather's marginal but within limits. Any questions? No, Captain. That earned him a brief glance. Her eyes lingered, assessing. I don't tolerate surprises, she said. I don't tolerate unnecessary delays. And I don't tolerate co-pilots who think procedure matters more than judgment. Daniel nodded. Understood. She closed her tablet and stood. Let's go. Outside, the air was sharp and clean, the kind of cold that woke you up properly. Valerie walked straight toward the aircraft stairs without a glance back. Daniel stopped at the nose. He always did. He set his bag down and began the walk around slowly, methodically, just as he'd been taught years ago, first by instructors, later by experience. He checked the radome for cracks, the windshield for pitting, the static ports clear and unobstructed. Left wing next. He ran his hand along the leading edge, feeling for nicks he might not see. Inspected the fuel caps. Looked down the wing's underside. Then the left main landing gear. Daniel crouched, letting his eyes adjust. At first glance, everything looked normal. Tires properly inflated. Brake were within limits. No pooling beneath the strut. But something caught the light at the wrong angle. A faint streak. Reddish-brown, thin, running downward from a fitting near the hydraulic line. Daniel leaned closer. Hydraulic fluid. Not dripping. Not gushing. Just present. Enough to matter. He'd seen worse. He'd also seen what happened when worse was ignored. Daniel didn't jump to conclusions. He pulled out a flashlight and followed the line upward. The fitting wasn't soaked, but it was damp. A weep. Old residue mixed with fresh. The kind of thing that could be nothing, or could be the beginning of something very expensive at altitude. He stood slowly. This was exactly the kind of discrepancy pilots argued about. The kind that tested whether you respected checklists or trusted bravado. Daniel didn't debate it. He took out his phone, snapped 3 photos and opened the maintenance app. Observed minor hydraulic fluid residue at left main gear strut fitting. Recommend inspection. Logged. Time stamped. Attached. Procedure. By the book. He finished the walk around, climbed the stairs and entered the cockpit. Valerie was already in the left seat, powering up systems. Everything good? She asked, eyes still on the overhead panel. No, Captain, Daniel said calmly. There's a hydraulic seep at the left main gear. I logged it. Maintenance needs to inspect. Her hands stopped moving. She turned slowly in her seat and stared at him. A seep. Yes. She unbuckled and stood. Show me. They walked back down to the gear. Valerie crouched, examined the stain, then straightened with a dismissive wave. That's residual, she said. Probably from a previous service. Happens all the time. Possibly, Daniel agreed. But the procedure requires inspection. Valerie's expression hardened. I don't need you quoting procedures to me, she said. I helped write half of them. Daniel kept his tone neutral. Then you know they exist for a reason. She stared at him, jaw tight. You logged it without telling me? Yes. That undermines my authority. No, Daniel said quietly. It fulfills my responsibility. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Valerie turned sharply and walked back toward the aircraft. Escalation begins back in the cockpit. Valerie grabbed her phone and made the call. Flight Ops, this is Captain Sloan, she said. I have a first officer who's logged a non-issue and delayed my departure. I need a replacement immediately. Daniel sat back in his seat, hands folded, listening without interrupting. Valerie paced as she spoke, her voice rising. This isn't about safety. It's about competence. And I won't be second-guessed by someone who doesn't understand judgment. She paused, listening. No, I'm not overreacting. I'm setting boundaries. Another pause. Yes, this is exactly the kind of thing women in this industry deal with all the time. A man questioning authority and hiding behind checklists. Daniel looked out the windscreen. He didn't respond. Valerie ended the call and turned to him. You should call your supervisor and explain yourself. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and removed his phone. He unlocked it and placed it gently on the console between them. He didn't say anything. Valerie glanced down and froze. At the top of the contact list, starred, was a name. CO, Aerovantage Aviation below it. Board chair below that. Director of Ops. Her eyes moved slowly back up to Daniel's face. Who are you? She asked. Daniel didn't smile. I'm Daniel Mercer, he said. And I own 46% of this aircraft. Silence filled the cockpit. Valerie's face drained of color. But Daniel wasn't finished. I'm also a single father, he added, voice steady. Which means I don't take shortcuts. Ever. Valerie swallowed. I was testing you, she said quickly. Seeing if you'd follow procedure under pressure. Daniel didn't respond. She forced a smile. You passed. She grabbed her bag and left the cockpit without another word. Maintenance arrived 10 minutes later. The technician inspected the fitting, frowned, and tightened it carefully. Good catch, he said. Another flight and this could have turned into a real problem. Daniel thanked him. The delay stretched to nearly an hour. The passenger, a hedge fund executive, was informed and unconcerned. Take your time, he said. I'd rather be late than airborne with an issue. When Valerie returned, she didn't apologize. She simply sat down and ran the checklist. The flight itself was uneventful. But the silence in the cockpit was heavy. Professional. Cold. Unresolved. When they landed, Valerie left without a word. Daniel stayed behind, completed the logs, and sent a brief report to operations. He knew what came next. And he knew it wouldn't be quiet. The email arrived that evening. HR has received a complaint alleging hostile work environment and abuse of authority. Please provide a written statement. Daniel read it once. Then again. He closed his laptop and leaned back in the hotel chair, staring out at the lights of the city below. He didn't feel angry. He felt tired. But not surprised. If you're drawn to stories where truth unfolds slowly and systems matter more than shouting, subscribe to the channel. Next part is where everything comes into focus. Daniel Mercer submitted his statement to HR the following morning. It was 5 pages long. Not because he wanted it to be, but because precision mattered. He included timestamps, screenshots, maintenance photos, procedural references. He did not speculate about Captain Sloan's motives. He did not accuse. He did not editorialize. He described only what had happened in the order it had happened, using the same calm language he used in the cockpit. When he finished, he reread it once, corrected 2 grammatical errors and sent it. Then he closed his laptop and went downstairs to have breakfast with his daughter. The investigation HR moved quickly. Too quickly for rumors to stay contained. Within 48 hours, Daniel received notice that Captain Valerie Sloan had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The company also notified him, quietly, that the cockpit voice recorder from the flight had been preserved. That mattered. Daniel had expected escalation. He had expected legal framing. He had expected optics. What he hadn't expected was how much history would surface once people started looking. The legal team pulled Valerie's records. 3 years of flight logs. Performance reviews. Training notes. Patterns emerged. 6 prior complaints. 4 from male first officers. 2 from flight engineers. Language repeated itself. Dismissive, hostile, unwilling to follow challenge response protocol, interprets procedure as insubordination in 2 cases. Co-pilots had requested reassignment. In one, a young first officer had resigned entirely after a single trip. Each time, the company had responded with coaching, counseling, communication refreshers. Nothing permanent. She was too experienced, too visible, too valuable. Until now. Daniel was invited, never required, to listen to the cockpit recording with legal present. He hesitated. Then agreed, hearing your own voice recorded is unsettling. Hearing someone else's tone preserved forever is worse. Valerie's voice came through first. Sure. Controlled. Certain. Then his own. Measured. Even. Professional. There was no shouting. No provocation. Just contrast. At one point, Valerie's voice cut in sharply. This is exactly how men try to reassert control when they don't like a woman in command. The room went quiet. The lawyer stopped the playback. That, she said carefully, is going to be very difficult to defend. Daniel said nothing. He didn't need to. Valerie Sloan hired an attorney. Then a publicist. Within days the story leaked, first to aviation forums then to social media. The framing was predictable. Senior female captain sidelined after challenging powerful male owner. Think pieces followed. Hashtags appeared. Some defended her passionately. Others asked uncomfortable questions. Daniel didn't respond publicly. He never had. He kept flying. Kept making school lunches. Kept showing up. That restraint mattered more than he realized. Because then the recording leaked. No one ever admitted how. But once it was out, it couldn't be unheard. People listened. And something shifted. The narrative didn't collapse. It dissolved. There was no villain speech. No smoking gun monologue. Just procedure. And tone. And silence where accountability should have been. 2 weeks later, the FAA opened a formal review. They focused on one detail. Valerie Sloan had been informed of a maintenance discrepancy requiring inspection, and had attempted to proceed anyway. Intent didn't matter. Outcome didn't matter. Willingness did. Her license was temporarily suspended pending review. Her lawsuit stalled. Her supporters grew quieter. And for the first time since this began, the system, not Daniel, spoke for itself. Daniel called a meeting with the executive team. No anger. No speeches. Just clarity. "We avoided action because we were afraid," he said. "Afraid of optics. Afraid of backlash. And because of that, we failed our people." No one argued. "We don't fix this by firing one person," he continued. "We fix it by changing who we train, and how." He proposed the scholarship program. Not as punishment. As correction. A pipeline built on humility, not entitlement. The vote was unanimous. A year later, Daniel stood in the same briefing room where everything had started. But the room felt different now. Across from him sat Elena Park, 27, former EMT, first in her family to fly. She was reviewing the flight plan with quiet intensity. "Anything stand out?" Daniel asked. Elena paused. "Weather's fine. But there's a faint hydraulic residue on the right main gear. Probably nothing, but I logged it." Daniel smiled, not broadly. "Just enough." "Good," he said. "That's exactly right." Maintenance confirmed it was residual. The flight departed on time. And something else departed with it: fear. That evening, Daniel sat on his porch while his daughter did homework inside. She looked up and asked, "Did you help someone today?" He thought about Elena. About the pilots coming after her. About a cockpit that no longer confused ego with authority. "Yes," he said. She smiled and went back to her work. Daniel stayed where he was, watching the sky darken, planes tracing quiet lines overhead. Flying, he knew, was never about power. It was about trust. And trust, once earned the right way, lasted. If you believe the strongest victories are quiet ones, subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are coming.